Good afternoon. Yeah, I'm a little late, not too bad. Boy, this will be brief because I don't feel well at all. My favorite uh, medicinal AlkaSeltzer. I woke up with a headache, but I think it's connected to my guts. But I'll go for a few minutes today. I thought I'd talk about the electron. Um, whew, a hydrogen atom has one proton and one electron. A helium atom has two protons and two electrons. And the electrons um, in the two electrons in helium atoms have different orbits, so they don't collide. So as the electron spins around uh, the nucleus, it's in an orbit that's pretty much fixed. But if the electron loses energy, it will drop to a lower orbit. And if the electron gains energy, it will rise to a higher orbit. And that's basically how fission works. How, for example, uranium atoms lose electrons, not necessarily in an explosion. Uranium devolves into lead over time. Uh, some nuclear reactors use uranium. The fuel lasts longer than we will live in most cases. Of course, there's more going on in fission because the nucleus will also lose protons. That's how uranium becomes lead. It isn't the number of electrons that determines what an element is, it's the number of protons. I probably shouldn't light a cigarette when I have nausea, but I'm going to. If I can figure out where my lighter is. Okay, so if an electron gains enough energy, it will leave the orbit and go off in a straight line forever or until it has so little energy that for all practical purposes it doesn't exist. Hello, Tim. Good to see you here. And strontium. Typing and talking at the same time really escapes me. Um, and of course, if the protons in the nucleus can either leave the atom or be converted into neutrons, so that the positive charge of the nucleus of, for example, uranium, uh, the number of protons has dropped, so it's no longer uranium, it's something else. Now, the easiest way to make the protons leave, of course, is in an atomic bomb. But over time, uranium atoms naturally lose protons and become eventually lead. They go through a complex series of changes. And I've always been somewhat suspicious of lead. It's used to insulate nuclear reactors to absorb the various particles coming off of the uranium so that we don't get radiation burns or radiation sickness. But doesn't that kind of make the lead radioactive? Well, anyway, the focus today is on the electron. I said it doesn't exist, and I'll tell you why. You've got these, even in the hydrogen atom, the electron has a choice of different orbits that it can use to spin around the nucleus. If an electron loses energy, it drops to a lower orbit. If it gains energy, it rises up to a higher orbit. But for as long as I can remember, even back in the 1960s, the physicists have told us that the electron does, when it changes orbits, does not pass through the space between orbits. It just, Newton told us that that's impossible. You know, Isaac Newton, Principia, well, we usually say Principia Mathematica. It's Latin. In Newton's time, scientists agreed to use Latin because, for example, an Englishman might not know any French or German, an Italian might not know any English, and so forth. Well, anyway, physicists today still agree that matter cannot go from one point to another without crossing the space in between. It assaults our sense of logic to have this electron doing that, but that's what it does. So, do electrons have mass? Apparently they do. It's very tiny, but it's there. They have energy. Anytime you plug in an appliance or turn on a light, you demonstrate that electrons have energy because that's what electricity is. And by the way, electrons don't just travel along the copper wire into your home and into the outlets. One electron bumps the next electron, and that bumps the next electron, and so on and so forth until the closest electron to the outlet where you're using it finally moves into your appliance. Of course, electrons travel at almost the speed of light, so you don't notice that. Now, Einstein told us that if you approach the speed of light, you get heavier and heavier and time slows down. Well, why don't electrons get heavier when they're traveling at the speed of light in, for example, a lightning bolt? Shouldn't they become so heavy and time becomes so slow that the electrons can't move? From our perspective, they are like so slow, like the astronaut traveling to Alpha Centauri at almost the speed of light. He would experience that in, just a few months or years, but we would see him taking 20 years to get there. And yet a lightning bolt is an almost instant flash. Why is time not affected in an Einsteinian way when electrons create a lightning bolt? They're traveling at nearly the speed of light, and they create light which, hey, travels at the speed of light. Do photons have mass? Shouldn't light become heavier and heavier and slow down to a snail's pace from our perspective? Something is wrong with our theories. And on top of that, no one has ever actually photographed an electron, and it is not simply the failure of our telescopes or microscopes or scanners to be able to resolve something that small. It's more than that. Electrons are fuzzy. Actually, all the parts of an atom are fuzzy and cannot be resolved into clear focus. Electrons don't seem to have a definite tunes about atoms. Okay, strontium. It might be explained by seeing the electrons as existing in higher dimension, and only a three-dimensional projection of them intersects with our 3D universe. Actually, that isn't so confused, strontium. Oh yes, Crichton, of course. And measurements over the years have shown different speeds for light. For a while, scientists got away with saying that, well, the old instruments weren't as accurate as these new ones, but more and more they're finding that light does not travel at a constant speed. Well, we know it doesn't. We know it slows down when it goes through water, which is why things underwater look displaced to us. For example, if you drop a stick in halfway into the water, the part in the water will appear to bend because light slows down going through water. But now they're finding that light in what they presume to be the vacuum of space also doesn't travel at a constant speed. Yeah, hi, CircleK. Now, some of you have told me your real world names or Facebook names, but I don't remember. I have to go back to my messages and check, but I know some of you outside of YouTube, which is really cool. AlkaSeltzer, headache, nausea. So, of course, I'm smoking a cigarette, which makes nausea worse. You see, AlkaSeltzer is almost the same as aspirin, but it doesn't dimension then our four dimensions of space and time. Then it doesn't exist here. We're just seeing a tiny part of the electron. Hence my title for this talk, Electrons Don't Exist. Or did I say do not? I don't get to see the title of this talk in the studio. That would be telling. Ah, yes. Gravity is faster than light. Gravity is actually instant. It doesn't need to travel at all, which is weird. Einstein explained it by saying that, I think it was Einstein, uh, objects that have mass bend space and time, so other things tend to fall toward them. CircleK is the other Tesla? Okay. I think that's what you said. Oh, yes, Tim. The AlkaSeltzer ads. I like the song Plop, Plop, Fizz, Fizz. Oh, what a relief it is. But yeah, there's this commercial for AlkaSeltzer back in the 60s when I think advertising was much more creative. This poor guy is doing he's the actor in a commercial where he has to eat spaghetti and they keep doing take after take and he's eating all this spaghetti with meatballs and he says, Mamma mia, that's a spicy meatball. And then he takes Alka-Seltzer for relief. 9 Eland, hello. Good to see a good sized group here, even though I'm not feeling well. People call you CircleK. Ah, okay. CircleK is your name. Okay. People call you that. Okay. Mel's Wheels, I know who that is. That's Dave. Hi, Dave. See, I remembered someone's name. Oh, Strontium didn't know about the spicy meatball. Yeah, well, you must be a sweet young thing. Yeah, Oswald, I use a neti pot and I have chronic headaches from my sinuses. But today I think it's something I ate. Anyway, electrons are weird. I'm not saying that there's something wrong with electrons. I'm saying there's something wrong with our scientific descriptions of the laws of nature, like, oh, Sandra, hello. Mm. There's something wrong with the way science looks at the universe because the laws of nature, which are really simply our observations of nature, collated and written down, don't seem to apply to things like photons and electrons. Don't trust atoms, they make up everything. That's cute, Strontium. And um, so I have the ether does exist. I was headed that way, CircleK. Light in the vacuum of space is traveling through what they used to call the ether. AETHER. Unlike ETHR, which is a knockout gas, it's also used in dry cleaning. Well, it was until some environmental rule made them switch to this nasty chemical that's even worse. I kind of understand it. If you're a dry cleaner and you're using ether, you really do risk passing out, but to replace it with a highly toxic compound doesn't seem right either. Okay, you don't pass out, you just die. Well, well, definitely before Einstein, perhaps earlier than that. Although in the early 20th century there were arguments about it. Many scientists, I gotta adjust the mouse. I use a real mouse. I am not capable of using a mouse pad. I'm not quite a Luddite, but I'm headed that way. Okay, scientists believe that the space between planets was a medium, not a vacuum, that there's something there, rather than the current view that it's nothing, which of course is ridiculous on the face of it, because so-called empty space is full of things like gamma rays, starlight, not to mention, you know, planets, asteroids, comets, stars. It's also full of all kinds of cosmic radiation, and in our neighborhood, the solar wind. Now, there might be vast distances between these tiny particles of gamma radiation and sunlight and so forth, just as there's a vast distance between the electron and the atomic nucleus around which it orbits. I agree, Strontium. I hate mouse pads. I wish I knew how to turn it off, because I'll like brush across it with my sleeve and it'll do something weird to my computer. So I use a mouse. I tried the cordless mouse, but I still had to use the USB port, and the battery in the wireless mouse kept going dead. So I got one with a tail, a wire. You put the mouse on the towel. My mouse is on formerly white typing paper. It gets, you know, dirty while I'm using it. Using a towel as a tablecloth. Maybe I should put a tablecloth on this little desk. It's just a tiny writing desk. But I do have a tablecloth that's made for a card table. It might work. But then it would cover the drawer where I keep all my goodies. Anyway, is that really empty space between the electron and the nucleus of the atom? Or is there something in there? Is there a medium? Well, it seems to me that there has to be something. And of course, now I call it dark matter and dark energy. There's matter and energy that we can't see, but if it isn't there, then our galaxy should fly apart. All the galaxies should fly apart. And the whole universe should become just a vast sea of nothingness. Everything would be there, but it would all be the same, evenly distributed, equal in size, and or nearly equal in size and shape, kind of like Democritus. Here. Deemos. Democritus, the guy who first talked about atoms. I gotta look up when he lived. I always forget. Around 460 BC in Thrace, which is actually not in Greece. Okay, so let's do where is Thrace? I'm pretty sure it's in Turkey. Oh, it's in Bulgaria. Okay, so at one time, that would have been, oh, the map is killing me. It's too small to see. Here we go. Yeah, Thrace is in Bulgaria today, but at one time it might have been either part of Greece or part of Macedonia, and I'm not going to pursue that too far. Oh, CircleK, when they say nothing can exist in a vacuum, that's a philosophical statement, not scientific. But I don't think we do exist in a vacuum. And as a recovering English teacher, I want to remind you, if you say vacuum, you're sabotaging your ability to spell the word. If you say vacuum, you remind yourself that it has two of the letter U, and CircleK spelled it right. And so did Mel's Wheels, which is Dave. Quantum entanglement, Larry and creature. What kind of creature? Let's see. Oh no. Kobe Bryant was a sacrifice to the Illuminati. Did he die or what? Or is he accused of something horrible? Scary creature. Well, speaking of creatures, my cat got spayed on Thursday. I had to take her back on Friday because he died. He was too young. Helicopter crash. Oh. You see, I turned off the radio and I don't have TV, so I didn't hear about Kobe. That's horrible. It's on Facebook Live and MSNBC. Yeah, well, I can't do two Facebook and YouTube at the same time. My stinking Verizon Wireless won't support two busy websites at the same time. God, tragic. Well, Kobe had some troubles regarding his reputation, but I didn't wish him ill. That's horrible. That's how Stevie Ray Vaughan died? I didn't know that. Wow. Loved Stevie's music. Well, Larry, do you know that Philip K. Dick wrote The Three Stigmata of Palmer Eldritch based on magazine articles about LSD? It was before he ever tried it himself. And he took LSD exactly 2 times. I don't know, that's victory and that's peace, but that's 2. And apparently in all over England and Europe, if you do the peace sign, it's really the F word, which we do with one finger. Anyway, oh, Eric Clapton was supposed to be on the same copter. Well, I'm glad he was too tired to fly. Anyway, Phil's friend from high school and his colleague as well, Ray Nelson, supplied the LSD. It was the pharmaceutical that Sandoz made, and UCLA was participating in experiments to see about the effects of LSD. And Ray Nelson had some kind of connection that allowed him to get LSD. But Phil decided he didn't like LSD. He had a vision of hell when he took it. Phil would smoke a joint if you handed it to him. He wouldn't seek it out. And his methamphetamine habit was a prescription from his doctor. That's how they used to treat depression and to help people lose weight. My dad was prescribed Benzedrine, almost the same thing, because he was, let's see, he had 4 children, a wife and 4 children. He was working and going back to school, to college, long story, and he needed to stay awake for long hours. So his doctor prescribed Benzedrine, but when he finished college, he quit taking it. My Uncle Ken, on the other hand, had some difficulty quitting the Benzedrine. He had it for weight loss and did experience withdrawals, but he got through it. I once, actually, all I did was touch a sheet of stamps that someone else had, not knowing they were coated with LSD. We were at Disneyland. So it was a very mild dose, but it did soak in through my skin. I found myself watching the pretty sunset when it was not sunset. It was broad daylight. Other than that, I thought, yeah. I don't like amphetamines. They make me fall asleep. I'm weird. Anyway, I didn't deliberately take LSD. It just happened. Phil had distant brushes with Dianetics and Scientology. Of course, he read L. Ron Hubbard's book, Dianetics, and didn't like it. Do you know that a great deal of Scientology is copied from the Mormons, the Latter-day Saints? Well, Oswald, I did eat blue mushrooms on 2 occasions. It was interesting. Everything was alive and sentient. I watered the lawn and the grass thanked me, and they told me something about the history of the land I was standing on. But don't ever look in the mirror if you just ate a mushroom, a blue mushroom, psilocybin. Uh, just don't do it. Trust me. What book of my own would I recommend? Oh, that's easy. Um, the I'm typing Darkening of the Light. It's a very surrealistic tale. It starts with a woman getting a chip implanted in her brain, and then her husband is attacked by alien slugs. Of course, it's possible that none of it ever happened and they're just dreaming, but they go through Dante's Inferno and the oh, come on, what's the word? The Inferno is hell, and then there's one level up. They can't go to paradise, just like Dante. Purgatory. And they end up in Mozart's magic flute, and their houses turn into pyramids. Oh, it's really cool, but you have to understand that it's all dreamlike. Okay. CircleK contacted the great mushroom in the sky, or it contacted him or her. I think him. Fun fact, let's see, Oswald says, oh, Oswald is Joseph. Fun fact, I remembered another name. There's a Mormon Transhumanist Association, and they're actually very hardcore, respected transhumanists. What, they want to have robot parts? Or do they want to change their gender? Remember the $6 million man, or are you too young? In the 70s, this series where an astronaut is nearly killed in a crash and they make him faster, better, whatever, turn him into a half robot thing. Kind of like RoboCop, but not as violent. CircleK is a store like 7-Eleven, yes, but the CircleK stores are disappearing. I think they're going bankrupt. Okay, who's stocked up on donuts and coffee? I've found that I used to get a dozen donuts and eat them in 2 or 3 days. Now I get one donut, one nice, delicious maple bar, and I can't eat the whole thing. Something has changed. Well, anyway, I don't like psychotropic drugs. They just make me weird. They don't make me well. And Phil showed me how you can achieve better effects by simply meditating. Yes, Lee Majors as Steve Austin. Sandra and Crichton get the brownie points. Strontium, too. Yes, Steve Austin was a childhood hero. And so I'm beginning to feel better. Might be the AlkaSeltzer, might be the cool conversation. Let's see. AlkaSeltzer's all gone. Coffee's really low. So let me take a mushroom effect. I lost track of time. I can't tell you how long it lasted, but I estimate 2 hours. Let me grab some water. Oh, back to my kitty cat who got spayed on Thursday and had to go back to the vet with a fever on Friday. I don't know what that vet did to her, but she's never touching my cat again. My cat, little Tora, was fine. She was even a little curious. Sure, she squirmed when the tech pulled out his thermometer and took her temperature to confirm the fever, but she was fine. She was calm, curious, looking around. The minute she saw that vet, she panicked. I could barely hold on to this squirming ball of fur. And it's just a good thing that Tora loves me because she didn't use a single claw on me. It was like she was trying to climb inside me for protection from that evil woman. And you know what? Even worse, this vet who claims that she's a professional and I'm not. After the guy took Tora's temperature, I'm in the little room waiting. The vet opened the door without knocking first. And when I said, wait, she stood in the doorway with the door open, chatting to a couple of her assistants. And when I said, close the door, she refused. Oh, we have to come in. And I'm hugging this squirming ball of panic. And then she tried to tell me that my cat got the fever because I took the cone off of her so she could eat and she licked her wound. The cone was way too big for my cat. She could not eat or drink and she tried and tried. So I took the cone off so she could eat and drink. It was too big. And this asshole vet wouldn't give me a smaller cone. Well, yeah, she licked her wound the first day because it was all itchy. She hasn't touched it since. She isn't bothering. Yeah. Well, the cone of shame would be okay if it were not over 2 inches away from her nose. Even with the cone over the dish of food, her mouth still couldn't reach the food or the water. And I'm not going to spend 2 weeks feeding her with an eyedropper and a spoon. So anyway, the cone is off, and I don't believe she got that fever from licking her wound. Oh, and it's not a wound. It's not a wound. It's a suture. Well, every other vet I've ever known called it a surgical wound. I mean, it's a not a suture. That's the stitches. It's an incision. Yeah, well, she made an incision which created a wound. Dumbass. She has no business touching anybody's pets. So I went to Yelp, and sure enough, there's all kinds of people complaining about her attitude and lack of caring and being mean to their pets. Yeah, well, see, she had been spayed the day before, so God only knows what the vet did to her. She wasn't afraid of anyone else in that office, just that one woman. She's never getting near my cat again. In fact, I had been to the same office, but a different vet about a month earlier. Tora had no problem. Strangers handling her, checking her throat because I thought she had a suspicious lump, giving her a shot. Oh, and then the vet had the nerve to charge me $155 for a shot of antibiotics. And I had no choice but to pay it. So anyway, I added my own negative review to Yelp. Yeah, I can understand the need for a cone of shame, but it doesn't have to be so big that the cat can't eat and drink. That's counterproductive. And she didn't seem to know anything about the alternative, which is a collar just around the neck, not over the face, that's just so big around that she can't reach her tummy and scratch her wound. She didn't have a clue about that alternative. So she put this little baby infant jumpsuit on my cat and sent her home. Well, by the time I got home, Tora had that thing off. She squirmed right out of it. And I just let her go, because you know what? It's the cat who has the wound. And I'm sure the cat knows how to take care of herself. I've had cats, always had cats, until recently when they got to be around 20 years old and died. Um, I've had cats spayed before, never had to put on the cone of shame, never had one develop an infection or a fever. I do what the vet used to tell me to do back before he got old and retired. There's this stuff called betadine, or you can just get liquid iodine in a rather, like an 8-ounce plastic bottle. It does not contain alcohol, it's just an iodine solution. You put a little bit of that on a napkin or a paper towel, add just a little water, and you gently pat the wound with it. Iodine kills infections, but she already had a fever the day after she was spayed, so I had to get her antibiotics. And I don't believe it was because she licked her wound, because the wound was not infected. This was something she got during surgery. And I asked another vet for advice, and he said, yeah, the fever wouldn't develop that fast just from licking her wound. Now, I don't blame the vet for the infection, but she blamed me. Stuff happens. Full of bacteria and it could cause an infection. And two, she might chew on the sutures and pull out her stitches. And the vet tried to tell me her guts would fall out. She isn't chewing on the stitches. She isn't even licking it anymore. Her guts are not going to fall out. And on top of that, apparently the standard advice now is for the cat to heal for 2 weeks, 14 days. They used to say 3 days to 1 week. Now, I suppose she won't be completely healed in 3 days or even 1 week, but the worst of it will have passed. The sides of the incision will have begun to reattach. She'll be able to be more active. Yes, pray for Tora, Joseph. Thank you. Actually, my cats never ate the gopher's head. They'd eat the gopher and leave the head on the front porch for me as a present. I guess they thought it was the best part. Okay, Carl Jung. He accepted students based on how comfortable his family, pets, and children were with them. Well, little Tora's getting much better, but she's still, not as active as she was before getting spayed. And it was necessary because the last thing we need is more homeless kittens, and I can't. If she had kittens, I'd have to get them spayed and neutered. Although I've always had a policy that it's more important to get the females spayed if you can't afford both, because at least the male cat is not going to get pregnant. But I've had male cats neutered when it was the benefits outweighed the problems that might occur. Yeah, the vet would not have been accepted into Carl Jung's classes. I'm still in shock. We're professionals, she says. And she doesn't know to knock before opening the door. Everyone else in her office knew to knock first. I am so angry at that woman. That was my major complaint. She didn't knock before opening the door. I mean, I know how to hold a cat. You take your thumb and forefinger and take hold of an ear while the rest of your hand grabs a hunk of the neck, which is very loose skin. Now, you're not going to hurt her neck, but you need to be careful with the ear. But it pretty much stops the cat from totally freaking out. I think this vet is an entitled um, she's awfully young and she bought the whole practice. So I'm guessing that her daddy bought it for her. She inherited money somehow because she's much too young to have accumulated what it takes to buy a veterinary hospital. And I use the word hospital loosely, but that's what they call themselves. Unless she went into extreme debt. And she's so young, she must be a recent graduate from veterinary school. So I'm assuming somebody bought it for her. Either she inherited wealth, or her daddy bought it, or her mommy bought it for her. She acts like an entitled brat. We're professionals. Yeah, well, professionals knock on the door before they open it. Jesus Christ. Mm. Anyway, poor Tora is going to be better, and a daily pat down with iodine won't hurt. I did get her what passes for pain pills. They're really anti-inflammatory, like aspirin or ibuprofen, but made for cats. They prescribed 3 pills, one a day for 3 days. So she had the third one this morning. Now that's actually a good thing. It reduces inflammation, swelling. That's good. That's pretty much what aspirin does for us. Oh, and by the way, don't take Tylenol. On top of all the horrible fatal liver disease that it's caused and chronic kidney disease, now the FDA has decided to label Tylenol a carcinogen. It causes cancer. Oh, Philip Blair, I have a wrench. I have a couple wrenches in the room. Awesome. I haven't had any trolls yet that I know of. Oh, and Strontium has a wrench. I forgot. Oh, well, these pills, I just put it on top of the canned food and push the pill down a little bit, and she eats it. Doesn't even seem to notice it. Yes, Mikhail, we had a conversation about Kobe Bryant. Apparently, it was a helicopter crash. If you scroll up in the comments, that's sad. He had his share of scandal, but yeah, I wouldn't wish that on him. Someone said that Eric Clapton was supposed to be on the same helicopter, but he didn't feel well. He was too tired. Well, kind of like what's his name? I keep forgetting the country singer's name. Well, kind of rockabilly, who was supposed to be on the plane with Buddy Holly, but he drew the short straw and ended up on the bus. Survivor's guilt. I think it was Waylon Jennings. Became a serious alcoholic after that because of survivor's guilt. Yeah, Buddy Holly, the Big Bopper, and La Bamba. What's I know the song. I can't remember the name. Those three greats of rock and roll. No, the Big Bopper was on the plane, wasn't he? Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and the Big Bopper were on the plane. Yes, thank you, Strontium. Who was only 77? Oh, Terry Jones. Yeah, Monty Python. Yeah, and yet, oh, what's his name lives on. I can't remember the other Monty Python guy, but one of them is still alive. No, I think it was Waylon Jennings who ended up on the bus and therefore survived when, the day the music died, the plane crashed on takeoff. Yeah, I heard about Terry Jones yesterday. I'm not good with names, but I know Monty Python. John Cleese, Eric Idle. Ah, I think they're still alive. But electrons don't exist, remember? That's how we started out. They orbit the nucleus of the atom. If an electron loses energy, it drops to a lower orbit. If it gains energy, it rises to a higher orbit. But it never crosses the space in between. So it violates the laws of physics. Okay, Strontium. Who had who had dementia? Terry Jones? Ah, thank you. Yes. Well, he was 77 years old. I hope I don't ever get dementia. Um, I did notice when Granny was 91 or 2, she started calling me by my mother's name. She forgot that my mother had died young and she thought I was my mother. But other than just a few little things like that, Granny was all there until she died at 93. Well, the last week to 10 days, she was really out of it. Couldn't leave her bed, and they couldn't really move her because it hurt her so badly. She had really bad osteoporosis, so I'm taking supplements in hopes that I won't shrink as bad as Granny did. I've already lost 2 inches and I'm only 65. I was 5'4" and now I'm 5'2", and I'm scared to go get measured again or even to measure myself at home. I might have shrunk more. Now, the chiropractor used to be able to get me back to 5'4", but I can't afford a chiropractor, and I don't think it's possible anymore. So I've got, all the various supplements, including shark cartilage, and I don't care if sharks are endangered, I need their cartilage. Well, I do kind of care, but they're kind of like the polar bear. You might see pictures on the internet of starving polar bears. But what you don't see is the pictures of the booming polar bear population. CircleK got an inch taller with the chiropractor's help. Well, I can't go back to our local chiropractor until he kicks his second wife out of the practice. You see, he divorced the mother of his children for this woman who came to work in his office. And she's allergic to fragrances. Okay, I'll accept that as something real. But why is she working in an office that has a massage therapist if she's that sensitive to fragrances? The massage therapist quit because she wasn't allowed to use any of the oils that are part of massage therapy because the doctor's wife is allergic to fragrance. And a friend of mine who does not use fragrance, doesn't like it herself, walked in for her treatment at the chiropractor's office and got interrogated by this woman. You're wearing fragrance. Well, it turned out to be her deodorant, her underarm deodorant, and she wasn't about to go in and do physical therapy without some deodorant. So she told the woman to suck it up, and Catherine is a tiger. She wears her deodorant, her underarm deodorant when she goes there. Me, I don't need the hassle, and I can't afford it anyway. Huh. Philip, that's interesting, using music to stop the progression of Alzheimer's. Well, I hope I don't have to worry about that. I do have some episodes of dizziness and memory lapses. About 10 years ago, I suffered a really severe concussion. My skull was cracked, my brain swelled up, and I've had some problems, mental problems since then. Like, oh, the toilet paper roll is empty, I'll go get a new roll. So I walk about 15, 20 feet to the closet where I keep the toilet paper and forget why I'm there. So I start making coffee. And then I go to the bathroom and there's no toilet paper. So I go back and get the toilet paper. That's all done. I sit down, reach for my cup of coffee, and I don't have a cup of coffee. And there's this strange whistling sound. Oh, yeah, that's the tea kettle. A typical day in my house is very interesting. Oh, and by the way, I fell on the ice at a local strip mall, but they had so little insurance that I got less than the cost of my hospital bill. which is one of the major reasons why I went bankrupt. I think I'm discharged now, but I'm not totally sure. Oh, Alan Watts. I have a feeling Phil did write about Alan Watts. Lived in Sausalito. Phil used to go around pretending to be a Zen master. He'd read a few things of Alan Watts. You might have met him, I just don't know. Could be. Phil used to hang around with the poets and philosophers in Berkeley. Berkeley, California. The one in England is called Barclay, but it's spelled the same. Anyway, where was I? Oh, yeah. You see, when I had made all my payments on my Chapter 13 bankruptcy, because that's the kind where you pay your bills, but they stretched it out over 5 years, and I made monthly payments, and my attorney, the only lawyer I could afford, the bankruptcy attorney, because she took monthly payments out of my Chapter 13 plan too. She applied for my discharge because I had paid all my bills. My mortgage loan servicer. See, Select Portfolio Servicing is not the actual lender. The various banks and savings and loans keep selling my mortgage back and forth, but I send my payments to Select Portfolio. They objected, claiming that I had missed 4 payments in the past year. That was news to me. Barkley sounds like a school for puppies, yes. Well, anyway, so I had to dig up all the receipts and canceled checks and stuff and prove that I had made the payments, they had cashed my checks, and they were full of it. And this is not the first time. It's happened about twice a year for the past 5 years. Well, once I'm discharged, I won't have the protection of the bankruptcy court. I can't just mail them copies of my receipts. I'll need a freaking real estate lawyer if they pull this while I'm without an attorney. So I might have to put up a new GoFundMe for get me an attorney or find an attorney who will take my case pro bono or at least cheap. Yeah, the phone company. I'm somewhat fortunate. I don't have a landline phone. Can't afford one. I have Verizon Wireless for phone and internet. They charge an arm and a leg, but it's the only service that actually gets me a signal at my house where I live. One of the disadvantages of living on the mountain. Sprint used to be fine, but they lost one of their cell towers up here and they never fixed it or replaced it. And there are still a few dead spots on our highways as you wind around and you have, a big chunk of mountain between you and the cell tower, but it isn't bad. Oh, I haven't used certified mail. I've been using priority mail because it gets there faster and gives me tracking so I can establish when they received my checks. I was getting postal money orders, but I've started sending my personal checks instead. I don't use their website to make payments because I don't trust them. Anyway, yeah, I make my mortgage payment every stinking month. That's the first thing I pay. Because there's no point having gas, electricity, and water if you don't have the house they're connected to. I'm okay this month. I'm okay for February 2020. And I think I'm okay for March. But that's when I have to get the rest of the upgrade on my kitchen done. The outside wall has to be insulated so the pipes don't freeze in the winter, and it'll save me on the heating bill. And I have to replace the covered unit, with the counters and the sink. There's no usable shelf or drawer in that thing because it's rotting away and falling apart. The one door came off, the other door is falling apart a little piece at a time. The little things around the edges, the borders, they're just falling off. It's rotting because there's no floor underneath it. It's sitting on the dirt. Well, I'm not going to make them sign for it because, you see, they have a post office box. They just dump the contents into a bag and take it to their office and spend about 2 weeks sorting through it. If there's something they have to sign for, they take it back to the post office between 2 weeks and a month later before they sign for it. And odds are the post office will send it back to me because nobody showed up to sign for it. So I use priority mail because my house payment goes to the post office box, and the post office sends me I go to their website and get the tracking information that says it was delivered, and I print it out and save it as an image. Yes, we have carpenter ants. The infestation is gone, but half my house is eaten. At least we don't have termites. They can't stand the winter cold. Carpenter ants are huge. Imagine two black widow spiders stuck together with a little waist in the middle. That's the size of a carpenter ant. Okay, someone asked about the Space Force. And it isn't down here, Philip, it's up here. Unless you mean south. Well, yeah, what Trump said when he announced the Space Force was, it's time we had another Space Force. Many people didn't catch that. I'm sure we've had a Space Force either hidden within NASA or separate from it, maybe in the Air Force or the Navy. My money's on the Navy. Do you know that the Marines are still technically part of the Navy? Well, anyway, I'm sure we've had a Space Force for some time. Yeah, I agree, CircleK. Navy is most likely. People don't tend to think of flying when they think of the Navy. They don't associate it. But the Navy, of course, has aircraft carriers. And I believe the Blue Angels are Navy. Can't swear to it, but Yeah. So now we have one space force out in the open, but we still have the hidden one. Sailors in space, yeah, kind of like Captain Kirk. Back in the 60s, a friend of mine and I were making up Star Trek stories with Captain Jerk. And instead of Mr. Spock, it was Sister Spock, and he was a nun. And instead of Mr. Sulu, it was Sister Mulu, also a nun. And the doctor was Dr. Duck Decoy. Yeah, maritime law. Space has often been compared to the ocean, for good reason. Anyway, I don't believe that anyone was drafted as a teenager, spent 20 years fighting on Mars, and then came back and was age regressed. That's just too wild for me. It strains credulity. But I do believe that we're already at war off this planet. I don't know whether the Air Force lands on aircraft carriers. I'm not a military expert. You should ask Walter Bosley. Crichton's cute. Let's see, Crichton is Jim, I think. And it always makes me think, it's dead, Jim. Or, damn it, Jim, I'm a doctor, not a bricklayer. Star Trek is the original series is indelibly etched into my brain. Thou shalt not mock his, well, it's eminence, not imminence. Eminence. Sorry, I'm a recovering English teacher. From what I've heard, I have no personal knowledge, but I've heard that William Shatner is an ass. But, what's his name? Jean-Luc Picard is even worse. However, Shatner was not afraid to make fun of himself, like when he was one of the murderers on Columbo. You know, he played roles in all kinds of TV stuff. And he was never afraid to make fun of himself and be the butt of a joke, a source of laughter. Oh, Dr. Judy Wood. When I read Dr. Judy, I was thinking of this radio therapist who's like, oh, God. Patrick Stewart, that's it. Yeah. A Facebook friend of mine once met Patrick Stewart at a convention and asked for his autograph. No, not his autograph. Asked if he could have a picture taken together. And Stewart declined. If I say yes, everybody will want to do that. Well, wouldn't that be good public relations? Oh. I know I don't make a lot of public appearances, but when I do, I'm available and accessible. You can have a photograph, an autograph, um, ask questions. Oh, and I don't charge money for an autograph. Of course, if you don't have one of my books, you can buy one, but I'll autograph a plain slip of paper if you really want my autograph. But take this tip that Phil told me. He didn't follow his own advice, but he said, never sign your books with the same signature that you put on your checks and your contracts. So I don't. But it will be my authentic autograph, just not the signature that I use for writing checks and signing contracts. I'm trying to get some more public appearances. I've been to the PKD Festival in Fort Morgan, Colorado twice now. They've had two festivals and I was at both. But Contact in the Desert is interested in having me next year. Um, it's too late for this year, but I might be there next year. They used to be in Joshua Tree and they've moved to, I think, Cathedral City. Anyway, it's somewhere near Palm Springs, which isn't too far for me to travel. Use my left hand? Well, I can use my left hand, but no, I just form the letters a little differently when I autograph something. In a pinch, I can write with my left hand. I just don't. Stewie? What's Philip referring to? Isn't Stewie on one of those cartoon shows that I don't watch? Um, the one where Kenny, you killed Kenny. They had to stop killing Kenny because people were complaining. Uh, Rather fly west than to New York City. Yeah. Apparently, the airport in New York City, I should know the name of it, is almost as bad as, oh yeah, Family Guy. Thanks, Philip. The airport in New York City is almost as bad as the one in Los Angeles, but not quite. Oh, I see. Stewart. Patrick Stewart is Stewie. Now I get it. I'm just a little slow. Still got the headache, but the nausea is subsiding. Probably because I haven't eaten any real food. I think maybe the eggs I had yesterday were a little too close to expiration. LaGuardia, JFK. Yeah, I think JFK was the one Phil told me about. He flew to France once for the convention in Metz, and it was like from Los Angeles to JFK. And he said he made the mistake when he needed a cab of not asking the one that was first in line. So the other cab drivers wouldn't take him because he didn't ask the one that was first in line. So he just, Phil, being rather contrarian, just kept going back farther and farther in the line of taxi cabs until he found one that would take him. Because in order to catch the next flight from JFK to Iceland, the departure gate was 3 miles from where they let him out of the plane from Los Angeles. And he made sure that he gave the guy a good tip. Then the next stop was in Iceland, And it was long enough that Phil exchanged some American money for Icelandic money. And he got a cup of coffee and offered an Icelandic dollar. And the cashier said, that isn't enough. It's $5. Not American dollars, Icelandic dollars. But at the time here in the US, you could get a cup of coffee for 10 cents and sometimes 5 cents. And even at the airport, it wasn't more than $1. So I guess Iceland's currency was not as valuable as American currency. And then he didn't tell me about the landing in Paris, so I don't know what happened. But he did say that the convention people took him to dinner at a nice fresh French restaurant. Well, Metz is part of the land that has been back and forth between France and Germany over various disputes and wars and battles. So Phil figured they probably speak German. So this French waiter comes to take his order, and Phil tries to talk to him in German. After that, the waiter refused to understand anything Phil said. He was so insulted, partly because Phil's German was so poor. He spoke German badly, but mostly because he was in France. Well, anyway, the other guys at the table had to order for him because the waiter refused to understand him. So Phil was like pointing at the menu, asking, "What's this?" And the waiter wouldn't tell him. And I think Phil deserved that. Most people in Europe know enough English that you can order from the menu in the restaurant. Schmeckt? I think that's actually Yiddish, CircleK. Now, I studied German in college, but I've lost most of my vocabulary. Well, Metz, the Germans pronounce it Metz with the T. The French usually call it mess without the T, like MESS, mess. But the French and Germans have fought for centuries over the rich farmland, mostly for vineyards, for winemaking in Alsace-Lorraine. But the Germans still have the Rhine Valley, which is a good region for growing wine grapes. Okay, Metz. Yes, thank you, Strontium. Metz or mess. It sounds like a word in Yiddish, but that's a naughty word. Yeah, I picked up a little bit of Yiddish from a former boyfriend, but I can't repeat the words. Even though this is not for children, it's still kind of PG-13. I used to laugh my head off at Joan Rivers. She had a record album with jokes that she couldn't tell on TV. Let's see. No, I'm not going to tell any of those jokes. Can't think of one that'll pass muster. And I don't want to get censored. CircleK, I think you're learning cuss words. Some people think it's funny to teach someone a cuss word and tell them it means something else. When I was a kid, they'd ambush littler children. This was done to me, but I didn't fall for it. If you sing Yankee Doodle but start each word with the F sound, like fanky, foodle, fent, foo, found, eventually you get to the F word. Ah, interesting, Philip. Um, let's see. All right. You're both spelling it wrong, but um, yeah, Google won't tell me. Word hippo says it has 19 possible meanings. They're all bad. Oh, bad, poor, hard, wicked, foul, unhealthy, stale, decayed, corrupt. In German, it's like this. So that's not actually a cuss word. But the other one with the M, I think it is, and I think it's Yiddish. And I think it has to do with fornication. Oh, the Zodiac is back. Hello, Zodiac. You know, Walter Bosley, who comes on YouTube around 5:30 Pacific time this evening, assuming he's on time. He has a lot to say about the Zodiac killer of the late 1960s and early 1970s. Apparently, there were more killings that he never got connected to him, but should have been. Uh, One in particular on the campus of Riverside Community College, but they've kind of done some demolition and built new buildings, so it's hard to locate where the poor woman was murdered. But it was probably a Zodiac victim, and um, okay. Well, okay. In German, in German, schmeckt means tastes good. In Yiddish, something else. Oh, come on, where's the Y? I typed a Y at the beginning of Yiddish. Yiddish. Uh, let's see. Schmeckt gut equals tastes good. Schmeckt, I forgot how to say bad. Gut means good. So schmecken is to taste like what a food tastes like. But in Yiddish, schmeckt is something else. Anyway, hi Manu. Another Facebook friend has shown up. Of course, I'm an hour and a half into things. You see, I've lost Larry because I'd never get a chance to use German. Once in a while, I hear someone in the grocery store speaking German because we have tourists coming here. And I'll try to start up a conversation, but I can't really get past things like, good evening, are you from Germany? How do you like the weather? Let me see. Sorry, Zodiac, but YouTube doesn't like what you typed there, and I think I'll just hide that. I have some wrenches in the room, but just the same, I'll take care of that one. German is now more widely spoken in South America than in North America. I believe it. I had an in-law who was most definitely German, but he spoke Portuguese too because he was from Brazil. And of course, Argentina is full of ethnic Germans. Well, you learned Yiddish from Groucho Marx, and yeah, well, if you watched Groucho Marx, I'm sure you didn't hear anything too risque or racy. Oh dear. Oh, I just remembered what the Yiddish is spelled. It's spelled with an A, not an E. So you have to be careful when you say that word. Anyway, I've talked about electrons here and there, and I wasn't going to stay on this long. Oh, my neck is stiff. And my poor kitty cat is getting better since she got spayed. Never. I don't know what that vet did to her, but she is never touching my cat again. I suggest it was hexadecimal strontium. It had various symbols that indicate a 16-digit code. And I don't remember how to read hexadecimal. I knew that once. I studied math and science until I chickened out and became an English teacher. Mostly because when I was in college, the professors, who were mostly men, simply refused to take a woman seriously in the sciences. It was the old, oh, you meet a man, you get married and have children, and educating you is a waste of time. Oh no, these were symbols like the $sign and the hashtag and the sign for the British pound. They weren't A, B, C, D, E, F. That's cute, Philip Blair. Marx and Lenin, as in Groucho Marx and John Lennon. I lost all respect for John Lennon when he left his wife for Yoko. Could be, Manu. I'm just thinking of an old Joan Rivers routine using that word, and I can't really repeat it. It's yeah. Now, John Lennon's first wife said the first she knew of Yoko Ono was when they were getting into the limousine, and this strange woman ran up to the open door where John Lennon and his wife were sitting and launched herself sideways into the back seat onto their laps. I forgot his wife's name, but she said, "Who is this and what is she doing?" And John Lennon kind of shrugged and let Yoko ride with them. That's just plain weird. Fire Sign Theater album cover. I don't know what that refers to, Crichton or Jim. I'm trying to learn names. Yes, there's words with positive meaning in German. Schmeckt gut, tastes good. Okay, Yoko Ono inspired the song Imagine. Well, I had the dubious pleasure of hearing when I used to listen to NPR, National Public Radio. This one show always opened with one of Yoko Ono's songs, with Yoko singing it, a recording. And I'm like, are you kidding me? This passes for creative music. It was Earth, I love you. Ooh, I love the earth. Ooh, ooh. Earth, I love you. Ooh, I love the earth. Ooh, ooh. Over and over. I don't know what the Fire Sign album is, Delta Dark. Maybe Crichton will tell you. Fire Sign Theater. It must be a Beatles or John Lennon album with that image on the cover. That's all I can think of. Yeah, that's one reason why the Beatles broke up. Although there is more to it, but John Lennon was insisting that Yoko become the fifth Beatle, and the others were not having it. What really amazed me after they broke up was George Harrison's solo album. I really liked it. George Harrison was awesome on his own. Yeah, only enough about Yoko. I try to be charitable toward second wives, seeing as how I'm a fifth wife, although I didn't know it until it was too late. When I met Phil, he said he was divorced. He didn't say he was divorced 4 times, and he didn't tell me that his divorce from Nancy was not concluded. There's a word. Oh, it wasn't final. He still had to go to court and sign some papers, and then there was a 90-day waiting period after that. By then, uh, my life pretty much revolved around Phil. And he wasn't rich or famous. He had all these books he'd written, which I really liked. When I met him, I didn't know who he was. He was that obscure. But I just was really delighted to have someone who talked to me on an intellectual level who wasn't, you know, well, of course he was a guy, but, I was used to at least the women around me talking about hair color, shampoo, laundry detergent, nail polish, makeup, fashion, and I just wasn't into that. I was into philosophy and science and uh, all kinds of speculative stuff. Uh, Phil gave two different stories about his first wife, Jeanette. One was that she wanted to date other men after they were married, so he put all her stuff outside the door and had the locks changed on the door to their apartment. The other story was that her brother thought Phil was a sissy because he had all these record albums of classical music and he threatened to destroy all of Phil's precious record albums. And at the time, it would have been pretty easy because most of them were the old fashioned clay platters coated with shellac. They are highly breakable. And apparently, Jeanette just moved on with her life, and she had to have known that Phil died. It was headline news in the, at least in the book review sections of the Times. And just wasn't interested. Didn't know him for all that long. He never had anything bad to say about his second wife, Cleo, and he really regretted leaving her for Anne. Had very little good to say about Anne, and was just heartbroken over his fourth wife, Nancy, and over his two daughters, Anne's daughter, Laura, and Nancy's daughter, Isa, because they would not let him see his daughters. Well, he never understood that. What did they think he was going to do to them, or were they just trying to hurt him by keeping his daughters away from him? Well, turns out that a stepchild of his, I don't know which one and I don't care to know, had accused Phil of child abuse. And I don't believe it was true. Phil didn't even want to hang around children. I mean, he was good with children, definitely good with his son, but he wanted to sit with adults and talk about philosophy and history and religion. Okay, what? No offense taken over. Okay, what did Strontium say? And I'm not following it. Um, Manu. Uh, Dear. Well, in Yiddish, schmack is the F word. Okay? Case closed. Crichton, I will arrange it so you can post the link, okay? Now you should be able to post links in this chat, Crichton, and you'll see a wrench beside your name. That makes you a moderator. So if there's any trolls, you can deal with them. Oh, Strontium. Of course German has positive words. Yeah, I get it. It's a joke. Anyway, people keep telling me how rough and coarse German sounds, but we only think that because we're used to hearing spoken English. German is actually much softer than English. You know, we say pretty, a hard P, a hard T. They say schön, all soft. Lots of words like that. Okay. Anyway, Crichton, if you would like to post a link, this is your chance. Yes, sure, Manu. I first learned a few German words by reading Escape from Colditz and watching the movie The Great Escape, which is why when Phil thought I couldn't understand him, he was telling Agneta Nilsson, Du bist eine schöne Mädchen. I knew exactly what he was saying. You are a pretty maiden, a pretty woman. Well, I translated it on purpose. You are a pretty, meaningful pause, lady. Because Phil thought I didn't understand those simple words. First off, he was using the familiar du bist instead of Sie sind, which is more formal. And Agneta was Swedish, but she knew German. She was there with some German and French students who were, college students who were interviewing Phil. And I don't remember names. I'm terrible with names, but one of them might have been Jean-Pierre Gorin. There you go, Crichton. Jim, a link to the album cover. Forgive me if I don't click it, but it's been almost 2 hours. And I still don't feel well. Yes, well, you see, Phil was not too often, but sometimes accused of being gay. His own mother accused him of being gay because he was interested in art and music and not in beer, hot dogs, and football. Oh, once again, YouTube thinks that my last name is a cuss word. Is not. Well, yeah. Some people think that Phil was German because of his last name, but he was Scottish. However, Dick in Scottish is pretty much the same thing as Dick in German, thick or fat. Although in Scottish they tend to use the word Dick to describe a stout warrior. Stay warm, sleep with socks on. Delta Dart. I sleep with 2 pair of socks. The thin ones underneath, because they're long enough to hold the thermals down. So when I put my jeans on, the thermals stay down. And then a fluffy pair on the outside to keep me. Yeah, well, Zodiac, some people argue that he was married 5 times because he was gay and his wives found out he wasn't. But who cares? I'm like, so what? Yeah, Michael or Michael. Yeah. Well, it was the age of Liberace and Johnny Mathis, and so they thought musicians were gay. And Phil could sing, he just wouldn't. But he proudly bragged that one time he got to play in Harry Parch's orchestra. Harry Parch was an experimental musician and composer, and Phil got to play the triangle in one of Harry Parch's performances. You know, you like hold the triangle and go ding, ding, ding. Let me get more water. Uh, uh, sorry. Mm, okay. So my kitty cat is getting better. Getting a little better, and electrons still don't exist. You can't pin down an electron. That's one of the tenets of Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. You can tell where an electron is, or you can measure its velocity. How fast it's going and in what direction. But you can't measure both at the same time. So either the location of the electron or its velocity is always uncertain. Which leads me to Schrodinger's cat. There's a cool cartoon making the rounds on Facebook and elsewhere. You see, if the cat is inside a box and you can't see it, the cat is both alive and dead at the same time because you don't know whether it's alive or dead. Well, in this cartoon, the cat is inside the box and writing equations all over the inside of the box, plotting its revenge. I love that cartoon. I still want a good explanation for why photons, which travel at the speed of light, and electrons, which travel at nearly the speed of light, don't appear to us to be seriously slowed down and don't appear to have infinite mass or close to infinite mass. One electron universe. Oh, but it's Wikipedia. One electron universe. Thank you, Manu. You should have been here earlier. You could be a lot of help. Feynman, I assume Feynman says, I know why all electrons have the same charge and the same mass. Why? Because they are all the same electron. Oh, that's like Plato's cave and what Phil used to say. There's only one cat. All the others are Xerox copies. Of course, some of you might not know what a Xerox copy is. It's like when you put something on your scanner and make copies. Xerox used to have a monopoly on that. So I guess you might say all the others are clones, or icons or avatars. Avatar used to mean, the reincarnation of Buddha. Now it's something that you used for your image in social media. So I'll look up Feynman. Wikipedia is okay except for their short their failings. For example, if I'm mentioned in an article or someone I'm related to is mentioned in an article, I am not allowed to correct any errors. You can't correct articles about yourself or your relatives. Okay, that's a quote from John Wheeler in a phone call with Feynman. Interesting, Manu. I will look into that. Wheeler. Well, um, if you go by the definition of the word, there's only one universe. And everything in the universe is part of it. But I kind of think after the experience I've had with cats that there really is more than one cat. They all have distinct personalities that go far beyond body shape or size, the color of their fur, and all that. Okay, Manu. I will allow Manu to post links. You are now a moderator and you can post links, but hang on. Well, go ahead and post links. I gotta scoot for just a minute. Real quick potty break. I'll be back. Oh, Lord. Hobble, hobble. I'm almost back. Someday I'll have a clean background with just books and stuff. I can't do it over the winter. I can't get all this stuff organized and the stuff tossed out. Oh, I got a happy face from Manu. Multiverse model shown in Amazon's Man in the High Castle. Oh yeah, the TV series of Man in the High Castle. Positrons are electrons moving back in time or vice versa. Yeah, that's a really long-standing theory, Manu. I remember reading it in the late 60s, early 70s. That antimatter moves, everything is reversed. It goes backward in time from our perspective. And I guess that's possible. Time apparently is just our way of sorting out our lives so that we don't have to swallow the whole thing at once. We can experience small chunks of our lives. I'm not sure I want to get to the end of it, but that attitude might change as my health declines and I get old. I like to say, though, I don't mind growing old because the alternative is unacceptable. Phil was so depressed for most of his life that he finally you could say took the easy way out. He quit taking his medication for his heart condition and his high blood pressure. And that's why he had a stroke. He probably had a heart attack too, but what finished him off in the hospital was an even larger stroke. Last time I saw him in intensive care, I knew he wasn't there anymore. You can feel it when someone's gone. Even with all the apparatus breathing for him and so forth, he wasn't there. Oh, growing young, like counterclock world. I wouldn't mind growing young, but the alternative is ending life. Yeah, well, Zodiac is kind of a odd duck, but he doesn't seem to be a troll, so and we kind of find him interesting. But I don't think the Zodiac killer is still alive. If he is, he must be like 90. So he's just using the name. Unless he's referring to the 12 constellations, the Zodiac, but I don't think so. Anyway, you know how these psychopathic serial killers find their victims? They act needy. They ask for help. They drop something or they can't lift something. They catch you off guard. Yeah, I believe that, Mikhail, that there was more than one Zodiac. A friend of mine and colleague, Walter Bosley, has looked into it much more than I have. But yeah, same with that Son of Sam killer in New York. He even told in his confession, he told the authorities, I'm just one of a group. They chose not to believe him. But as I said, Walter Bosley has done the on-the-ground research and the book research and so forth. I haven't, but the case he presents is pretty strong, as strong as you can get. And I think Sherlock Holmes would agree with him. Anyway, one time I was actually living near a bad part of town, a gang-infested part of Riverside, California. Not in it, but near enough. And I saw these, I think they call themselves charros, these young Hispanic men wearing black slacks and white shirts. Group of them coming toward me when I had just parked my car and gotten out. I think I did the right thing. They said something to me, but I didn't know them, so I just ignored them, turned around, and walked away and went into my apartment and locked the door. They didn't follow me. I don't know what they wanted, but I didn't want to find out. I had heard stories about those guys. They were a gang. Oh, Seth speaks. I have many problems with the Seth material, but you can find some good stuff in it. But I question the source. I'm sure the original woman is no longer living. The one who was in touch with Seth, this spirit. Um, I'm not sure that this Seth was telling her the truth about himself. And there's a new person who claims to have been contacted by Seth. Maybe, maybe not. But I just don't trust messages that come through spirit mediums. I don't. And I think it's dangerous to contact spirits. You don't know what you're going to get. A friend of mine in high school got hooked on using the Ouija board, and she thought she was in contact with the spirit of a soldier who had died in Vietnam. But as it progressed and she became more obsessed, it started telling her things that were very harmful until she finally gave it up. Oh, the Course in Miracles. Yeah, it's interesting, except the problem with A Course in Miracles is that if you don't get your miracle, they blame you for doing something wrong or not doing something. Miracles either happen or don't. You don't have to deserve them. I mean, if you had to deserve miracles, the Rockefellers wouldn't be wealthy, and the Rothschilds would go back to Jordan where they came from. Well, their ancestors came from Jordan. if you had to deserve a miracle, gee, many of our political leaders would be working as garbage collectors or um, widget makers in a factory or flipping burgers. Well, maybe only one zodiac. There might have been copycats, you know. Well, that's good for the Course in Miracles book. Thank you, Manu. But the highly paid public speakers and church leaders who promote the Course in Miracles will tell people they didn't pray hard enough or they weren't sincere in their request for the miracle or they didn't deserve it. These faith healers pull the same thing. I can't heal you because you don't have faith. Right. Time is how we measure motion between two or more objects. That's what it really is. But we can't go backwards in time for a number of reasons. Phil talked about orthogonal time, which is a fancy word for perpendicular. Here's our timeline, here's orthogonal time. Not extending up, yes, but also reaching down into our timeline. Interesting, Edward George or Georg. You spelled Edward like a French. My French is like horrible. I can say merci beaucoup, and that's about it. Oh, and tuna pa. It's both relative and not relative. Romanian. Wow. I have a Romanian in here. Thank you, Edward. Um, the original gypsies were Romanian. They were one of the first groups that Hitler tried to wipe out. They were too independent in both mind and body, and they were, mobile. They could move around. They were gypsies. People thought they were Egyptian. That's why they called them gypsies. Philip, you spelled scare instead of sacra. I don't yet know how to put an accent on it, but sacred blue, that must mean something more, but I've never looked it up. It might be just an Americanization of something, but I don't want translate, I want meaning. Let's see, sacre bleu. A French expression of surprise, exasperation, or dismay. It's a profanity. Huh. Oh, I see. It's like when we say heck, you see, let's see if I can spell this right. They've replaced the word for God with blue because they rhyme. So it's really holy God, but it's holy In American English, we'd say, holy heck. Or, my God. What's like Robin from Batman? I missed something, Manu. Oh, I get it. Robin used to say, like heck and darn, and then Batman would say, watch your language, young man. Oh, wow. Anyway, yes, this world, I guess technically this world is real, but it is not what we think it is. If it were, we wouldn't have these strange coincidences and intuitions. Uh, Deja vu and just knowing what someone's going to say before they say it, knowing that something's going to happen before it happens, precognitive dreams. Yeah, they can't pin down the speed of light. But, you know, I still don't understand if you get increasingly heavy as you approach the speed of light, you approach infinite weight, and you're slowed way down. Time slows way down for you. How does light ever get anywhere? And electrons, which travel at nearly the speed of light, how can they possibly move along a wire into your home to light up your lamp or run your computer? If they're infinitely heavy and infinitely slowed down. Oh, IB Collectibles. Hello there. I've been on for almost 2.5 hours. My coffee cup is empty and my water's empty almost. And I'm beginning to think I'm just babbling. But the chat is so interesting, I don't want to sign off. So let me make more coffee and come back and talk some more. Oh, Lord. Okay. Where is it? I think I'll make tea. Friend gave me all the tea that she doesn't drink anymore. It interferes with her medication. Lloyd's Fine Tea, Lipton Blackberry. Weird. What's this one? Passion Herbal Infusion. Um, Constant Comment. Yes. Oh, Tora wants to investigate the tea. Come here, Tora. Say hello. Come on, sweetie. There she is. She's my best good girl. Are you a wiggle worm? Yeah, she wants down. See the tummy? She's spayed. and shaved. On top of the cone of shame, it's the baldness of shame. That's my good girl. Yes, you can hop down. She wants to chase the pretty light, the laser pointer. Okay, I got my constant comment T. She can't jump up like she used to do or as she used to do. Yes, I'm a recovering English teacher. Not until she heals a little better. Constant comment. So when that tea kettle starts calling me, I'll go make tea. Electromagnetic field propagating through the wire at the speed of light. Well, the electrons bump each other. This electron bumps that one. This one bumps the next one, and so forth. So the electron that you get is really the one that's right at the connection. Oh, in the Ottoman Empire, if a husband could not provide his wife with a sufficient amount of tea, she had the right to divorce him. I'm beginning to like those Ottomans. You want Tora to have a bat mitzvah? Well, poor thing. She's happy to be home with her mommy and not that mean old vet. What do I make of the flu in China? Do not panic. That's what they want. We have all kinds of viruses and bacteria that can kill us. And yet they want us to focus on one that has killed now 56 people in China. And we have 2 cases in the United States. They are not expected to die. I think the water is almost boiling. Let's go make the tea. Oh, pretty kitty cat. You're just a sweetie. Okay, I think I'm back. Oh, such a cute kitty. She's sharpening her claws on her little stool. It's covered with an old needle point. It's better the stool than my recliner chair. Yes, there's an outbreak of a potentially fatal flu or coronavirus. It isn't the flu. I skipped the flu vaccination this year, and guess what? The vaccine is for type A flu, and the outbreak is type B flu. Go figure. Coronavirus. But plenty of people die all the time from regular flu, influenza. Primarily the very old, the very ill, and the very young. Oh, Philip lost someone to the flu a couple years ago. Well, I had the flu once in 1969, and I was taking care of all those sick people because I just had a runny nose and a little cough. It also affected their guts or perhaps their ability to get up and go to the toilet, so I did tons of laundry. I just wasn't very ill. That was, we called it the Asian flu or the swine flu or some such. Whatever it did kill people, but not me. It was kind of like a head cold for me. Yeah, I probably had a little bit of a fever one day, but it didn't keep me down. However, when I was a child, I had my vaccinations, and my son had his vaccinations when he was a child. I drew the line when he transferred to a new school, and they wanted him to take all these vaccinations again because they lost the paperwork. And I pulled the religious exemption because back then you could. I was not about to have him retake all the vaccinations he'd already had. There would have been 6 of them. Now, there was one exception to vaccinations when I was growing up. I originally had the polio shot and the sugar cube. But when half of my first grade class got polio and never made it to second grade, Mom started faking our vaccination records. She let us take the sugar cube, but not the shot. But I had the DPT and back then they gave us a smallpox vaccination. And of course an occasional tetanus shot. I still believe in the tetanus shot. It works, and where I live it's necessary because the rodents and raccoons and various critters up here carry tetanus, so it's in all the soil. Now, the thing to do if you have the flu and you think it's serious is to get treatment. They do have antiviral treatments, which they didn't have when I was a kid. They have antiviral medications that can help you. I've never had a flu shot. I didn't know they had flu shots until maybe 10 years ago. And even then it was like, why aren't you offering me the MMR, the measles, mumps, rubella, or the pneumonia vaccination, which I'm told is very effective? And most people who die from the flu are actually dying from pneumonia that hits them while the flu is depressing their immune system. Next time I see a doctor and she brings up the flu shot, I'll say, well, you give me the MMR and the pneumonia shot, and then we can talk about the flu shot. Although it's a little late for the MMR, I got the measles about 2 years ago. You see, after you get the MMR, some people actually shed the live virus for about a week. And I was in contact with someone who proudly proclaimed, I just got the measles shot. Well, yeah. About 2 days later, I had the measles. Fortunately, I was not very ill. I had a low-grade fever, and I used rather, I ran out of Kleenex, so I started using napkins to blow my nose. I still use napkins. I like them better. Tora, don't claw my jacket. Here's your pretty light. She loves the laser pointer. Yeah. Oh, and Tora got her rabies shot and her feline distemper shot. Rabies, we have raccoons and rodents and bats that all carry rabies. Oh, and coyotes and mountain lions too. And bears. That's what killed Old Yeller. The bear had rabies and Old Yeller caught it. Mom never let me see Old Yeller. I finally saw it a couple years ago on the internet. I forget which streaming site. Yeah, Tora came with the name. It means little tiger in Japanese. Well, when you get near the end of Old Yeller, it's heartbreaking, but then there's a few minutes more in which it turns more positive in terms of the cycle of life. I don't want to offer spoilers if you haven't seen it, Crichton. Let's see, Crichton is Jim. I won't remember this tomorrow, but I'm working on names. So that move. Oh, I don't know how long I was disconnected by my wobbly Verizon wireless. I almost cussed, but then it decided to reconnect me. Okay. Crichton never saw Old Yeller. Well, it's very sad, but then the last few minutes of the film offer a more positive take on it. I won't give you any spoilers since you haven't seen Old Yeller. Philip's cat isn't falling for that again. Well, Tora just loves to chase the pretty red dot. Where the heck did she go? Oh, there she is. In fact, no matter where she is, if she hears me go, she comes a running because that's the sound of me getting the laser pointer ready. And or sometimes I just go, kitty, 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 kitty. Because I want her to come to me when I can't find her. Yes, that's Taurus. Little red dot. It's got your paw. It's got both your paws. Wow. We have been going for 2 hours and 40 minutes, but I wanted everybody to have a chance to discuss, let's see, this world, reality, relativity, time, space, the ether. Well, cats are cats are generally considered feral even when they live in your house and never go outside and only get to eat what you give them. They can be trained, hence commercials and TV shows with cats in them. Well, actually, dogs domesticated themselves first. They just started moving closer and closer to the campfire, begging for scraps. At least that's how the story goes. I prefer cats because I don't know. I just do. But I want a dog. I know I can't afford to take care of a dog. One more vet bill would destroy me financially. Tora was expensive enough. And I even got some contributions from charities to get her spayed. But anyway, when I win the lottery, I'll go to the pound and adopt a shelter dog. Yes, Tora, she's sweet and cute. Yeah, Tora is, of course, the law, the five. I believe it's the first 5 books. There's another word for that. The Pentateuch. Phil pronounced it Pentateuch. I've heard other actual scholars say it's Pentateuch. The first 5 books of the Bible. Anyway, the Torah is the law. But this Tora came with her name, and she was named for the Japanese word for little tiger. Xena is somehow entangled with a cat in Divine Invasions. It's been too long since I read that book. Okay, since you guys are still chatting, I'll just get some water and not hang up yet. It's less expensive to support a Buddhist monk than a dog? Wow. Well, I'll tell you, Tora keeps getting new catnip mousies because she kills them quite thoroughly. Fortunately, catnip mousies are cheap. It's like $5 for a pack of 6 catnip mousies. She wears out the batteries in the laser pointer. The replacement batteries would be $10, but a new laser pointer is $3. Yes, dear. You got a pretty red dot to chase. I don't know what is so fascinating about it. I splurged and got her one of those little toys with the mouse inside. I'll get it. Ah, here we go. See, there's a mouse inside. When she discovered that she can't get the mouse out, she lost interest. So I started putting her toys in it. Her ball and her mousey. But she still prefers the pretty red light. Sometimes I point the pretty red light at this toy. But she doesn't want the Mousie that won't come out to play. Okay, Manu looked up Tora in Japanese. Well, I was told that it means little tiger, so I'll take their word for it. There's a movie, Tora, 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 so I guess that means tiger, tiger, tiger. A war movie, of course. So basically, a $3 laser pointer is cheaper than $10 replacement batteries. Now she's got her Mousie. Her fur and feather Mousie. She really wants outside because there's other cats out there. My front door is mostly glass, and the other cats will come and sit by the front door, and they'll kind of exchange cuss words through the glass, and eventually they come to tolerate each other. It dawned on Edward that maybe our time is just a pretty red dot pointed to our attention by the big time. That's a good one, Edward. Mm-hmm. Wow. Sorry to eat and talk, but I gotta have my potato chips. I need salt. My blood pressure tends to be very low, so the doctor told me many years ago, eat extra salt. Eat as much salt as you want. It helps. Okay. You silly cat. Such a pretty girl. I'm convinced that Tora is a bobcat hybrid. It isn't just that she looks like one, she behaves like one. I've had them before. I had two of them. They were litter mates, Bob and Bobby, for obvious reasons. Bobcat hybrids. Yeah, humans tend to be stupid compared to cats. Oh, she's killing a Mousie. Catnip Mousie, furs and feathers and catnip. It's been a while since I've had a cat that actually reacted to catnip. Although I had some catnip mint growing in the garden, and something ate it all, killed the plant. So there must be a cat around here somewhere that loves catnip, just isn't one of mine. I was down to one cat, and she is feral. She won't even come in the house now. Since Blackie died, Blackie was almost 20. Once Blackie died, Sweetie would not even come in the house. I'm not allowed to touch her, but she knows how to demand to be fed, and she loves her treats. But lately, Sweetie has started rolling over and showing me her belly, so I guess she's building up some trust for me. She's a black and white tuxedo kitty with long fur like a Persian cat, but a normal face like any domestic cat. I'm hoping that in the summer, when it's warm enough to leave the door open, Sweetie will come inside, as long as I don't try to trap her in here and freak her out. Just leave the door open so she can come and go. But even in the worst of the snow this winter, she has refused to come in. Even when I put the food inside and left the door open and froze my butt off. She just ate the food and left. And of course, I wasn't allowed to move at all. I had to stay put in my chair. The least little movement, and she would run back outside. And I wanted her to be well fed in the snow and cold. Okay, I think we're about done now. We're 2 hours and 50 some odd minutes in. And I was not planning to talk more than half an hour. I really appreciate all of you coming in. It's been wonderful, and this is one of the greatest chat rooms ever. Well, thank you, Edward. That's interesting about the tarot. I was given a set of the Philip K. Dick tarot cards by one of the creators of it, and it's signed by, well, the box is signed by all three of them. But I haven't taken the cards out and looked at them. I just look at the images that get posted online. Huh. Tora is written on the 10th of tarot card, Wheel of Fortune, etc. Okay, well, thank you all for coming in. Oh, yes, I have to type that. Thank you all for chatting and listening. Yeah, on Facebook, it's the Phil Dickian, I think. Facebook. And there's an eBay store for Zach's books. He has a deck for sale unless he's sold it already. Edition of the Tora, but they plan to release the way I heard it, the way I understand it, is not just a second printing, but a second edition with some differences. Oh, EV, thank you. I really gotta go. It's time to tend Tora's surgical wound, her incision, make sure everything's healing properly. And don't forget Walter Bosley channel. Bosley on YouTube. Check out his channel. I noticed some of my listeners also listen to Walter Bosley. He's more of an on-the-ground researcher than I am. I do mostly book research. Okay. Oh, sorry. Really out of it today. And yet you guys kept me awake and talking for almost 3 hours, or dinner as the case may be, or maybe even supper. And have a great evening and a great week ahead.